It was Plato who's credited with the adage, "Our need will be the real creator." Translated to modern English, and the proverb has become, "Necessity is the mother of invention." The Jeep, flu vaccines, mass production of penicillin, jet engines, electronic computers, nuclear energy, synthetic rubber, duct tape, radar, the microwave oven, and even the first seeds of artificial intelligence were all created as a result of the Second World War. The International Watch Company's iconic Swiss-made pilot watches are also part of this lexicon. And today we're focusing our attention on the IWC Mark series, specifically the latest iteration, the Mark XX. The saga all began when the British Royal Air Force commissioned the then neutral-partied IWC to engineer an aero navigation tool with magnetic resistance for their navigators and pilots, with an emphasis on accuracy and legibility in the mid-1940s. What IWC produced in response was different from the 1,000 or so Fliegers, which would later become the IWC Big Pilot, purchased by the German Luftwaffe earlier in the war around 1940. But its utility was much the same. They called it the IWC Mark XI. But how exactly did we get from the Mark XI to the Mark XX? 1994 saw its reissue closer to the form we're used to now, with a less field-style dial and modern finishes. Marks 13 and 14 were skipped for their superstitions. The Mark XVI changed the Mark XV's date window from white to black, and the Mark XVII framed it and reverted the window back to the 15's white background. Confusing? Maybe a bit. In effect, 2016's Mark XVIII is what bore the majority of the Mark XX's internal DNA. A soft iron core to bolster its anti-magnetism, and a true-to-form 40 stainless steel case like the Mark XI. The Mark XVIII was so popular, it saw a slew of editions, including the extremely well-received Le Petit Prince, or The Little Prince in English, based on the book and subsequent animated film, the Mark XVIII chronograph Top Gun, issued to the graduates of the US Navy Fighter Weapons School, yes, the same one featured in the movie franchise, and a Mark XVIII 1948 reissue, a salute to the original. IWC must have lost count somewhere along the way. Although there are dozens of Mark XVIII variants, we never saw a Mark XIX. However, IWC quickly followed up the XVIII's many clones with the Mark XX, which is, in many ways, the Mark series many have been asking for, so let's get right into it. Okay, at first glance we'll be the first to admit it doesn't look all that different from the Mark XVIII, but there wasn't any hyperbole when we said that the Mark XX was the model folks had requested. We'll just need to look inside, mainly, to find out why. Externally, the Mark XX is not a far cry from the former, but that shouldn't whet any eyes since both are stunning. But that doesn't mean that the Mark XX doesn't come with any tricks up its sleeve. The date window, the one that's flip-flop from white to black with a frame, to white, and then to black again, is now, bingo, you guessed it, white again. Also, there's just a tad more room to breathe. IWC definitely implemented more negative space between the Arabic numerals on the minute track, and also may have decreased their size by just a hair. The 18's handset was framed in black, except for the bright white seconds, matching the dial background. And now we see rhodium plating framing the inset loom on the Mark XX, making them pop, especially on our blue variant. Like each release of the Apple iPhone that gets a fair amount of flack for its design redundancies, that sometimes feels like bare minimum money grabs, there's certainly going to be some folks who look externally at the Mark XX and are completely fine sticking with the Mark XVIII. That all being said, we did say that we'd have to dive even deeper to ascertain why the Mark XX is a welcome update. Beginning with the case, the Mark XX uses a 40mm fully brushed stainless steel unit with gently sloping lugs, a polished bezel, and a knurled crown that looks like the same one built into the Mark XVIII, but maybe just a touch wider. In many ways, the Mark XVIII feels more toolish, as its bezel came fully brushed like the rest of the case, and the thickness, size, and spacing of the dial elements feel bolder. The Mark XX, conversely, polished the bezel to a mirror finish, and now we'd say you could comfortably wear this in a white collar locale, at a wedding, or even for a date. The case isn't a complete replica. One big technical specification, the decision to increase the water resistance to 100 meters from 60, speaks to how IWC is viewing the Mark series moving forward as a go-anywhere, do-anything piece. One to rule them all, so to speak. The look and feel of the Mark XI could have passed for a field watch, and since that's the genesis of the line, it would make sense that IWC beefed up the all-around utility, since this is more their everyday field pilot hybrid, if you were to put it head-to-head with IWC's other very popular but dedicated pilot line, the Big Pilot, a large modern descendant of the Flieger. Lug to lug, you're talking 49mm, and its thickness stands at just 10.8, making it shorter and thinner. But don't expect it to wear any smaller than the 40mm diameter would suggest, although the diameter alone isn't always a surefire way to ascertain how a watch may look and feel on the wrist. In this case, it's actually a fairly accurate assessment in regards to the wearing experience. Although two very different birds, pardon the pun, the Mark XX does share a select few design elements with the big pilot, like the high noon indice and the similarly shaped handset. But there's one more shared trait. On the case back, much like the big pilots featuring the Junkers Ju-52, the Mark XX is engraved with a different plane. Wait, no, that's also the Junkers Ju-52. Interesting. Although the stainless steel case is notably brushed and beautifully finished, the show-stopping radiant blue sunburst dial under the semi-dome sapphire serves as a high-contrast backdrop for the Arabic numerals, traditional pilot watch indices like the high noon inverted triangle, and the rhodium-plated hands. We spoke about the changes IWC made from the Mark XVIII to the Mark XX in some detail already, so we won't beat a dead horse. But we're big fans of the subtle changes and particularly love the blue dial option. IWC put to market two dial colors, a traditional black and a sunburst blue. The black dial is even in terms of texture from edge to edge, which is to say there's not really any perceivable texture, and it's borderline matte. By comparison, the blue dial, which is what we have here, sports a radiant sunburst pattern that extends from the handset and maintains far more reflectivity. If black or blue aren't your colors and you're looking for something with even more character, you're in luck. IWC surprised everyone 6 months after the Mark XX's initial red carpet debut with the sunburst green dial, and then again in June of this year came out with the 75th anniversary white edition. Internally, here's where the bulk of IWC's updates on the Mark XVIII to the Mark XX become apparent. We saw the Sellita-based 35111 offered with the XVIII, which provided 42 hours of power reserve. The new in-house automatically wound 32111 caliber, however, massively upgrades your specs, offering 120 hours of power reserve while increasing the components to 164, aided by 21 joules, all while keeping the same 4Hz beat rate. We doubt anyone wearing the Mark XX is going to cross paths with overly strong magnetic fields, but as an extra measure of protection, IWC's built in a soft iron case around the movement, tucked just behind the screw-down case back that bolsters its resistance. And if you're asking why this is even necessary if the bulk of the previous generations weren't outfitted with this tech, well, as electronics are now nearly intertwined with everyone's day-to-day, it's hard to not avoid any type of electromagnetic field, which could, over time, affect the accuracy of the movement. Why spend upwards of $5,000 for a first-rate in-house caliber if you're going to only experience a loss of accuracy over time by means of weak protection? And again, this could happen gradually. In a study conducted by German-based Zinn directly, they analyzed 1,000 watches that came in for normal service or repairs. 60% of the watches were magnetized, and 30% had what Zinn deemed severe defects relating to magnetism. Zinn stated that the wearers weren't aware of any contact with sources of magnetic fields, which means that day-to-day, your watch could certainly come in contact with multiple potentially hazardous fields detrimental to the accuracy of your wristwatch without you even knowing. Therefore, a soft iron inner case like the one built into the Mark XX or any means of field protection like using amagnetic materials like titanium or ceramic start to make more sense, even for daily wear. A great bracelet or strap on a watch you've already fallen for is the cherry on top or the icing on the cake, whichever way you lean. The Mark XX comes with a few options which affect the price. At $5,250, you're given a solid leather strap dyed to match the dial color, or at least that's for the black and the blue dials. For the green, you're given a classic brown, and all can accommodate the stainless steel bracelet with an ease exchange system for about $900 more. And we by no means mean to confuse. The convenient ease exchange system comes standard with any strap or bracelet. All in all, not a lot to report on with the strap, but the ease exchange system is notable and it's convenient, and it's clear IWC gave each component of this edition proper thought, which we do appreciate given this many iterations since the original Mark XI. We have to ask, or we don't feel like we've done our reviewing due diligence. Is the latest IWC Mark XX worth it? Have they made enough changes to the internal build with the in-house movement and magnetic protection, and recomposed dial layout to justify yet another Mark series release? In this case, had IWC not paid any attention to the internals, we would have said no. But the effort behind the caliber's improvement in this case is enough to win us over, even if it does look similar to its predecessor. So, as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know what you think of the IWC Mark XX.